What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben, and welcome back to the bench, guys, for another episode of Ben Builds with Joe. We are back on the bench with our 1/48 scale Hobby Boss F8F-1 Bearcat. And today, I'm hoping to go ahead and finish off the cockpit and start work on that engine firewall area. There's a lot of details in there that we need to go ahead and add. So let's go ahead and just see what we can do. First of all, we need to go ahead and finish off the cockpit instrument panel. That's going to require some decals. And because I've added in a few extra dials and gauges and whatnot, we're going to have to go ahead and source a few extra decals to go ahead and make it look a little bit busier. So that's where we're going to go ahead and start today. I also have to go ahead and create some of the little different attachment points that sit on the front of the firewall, such as the engine attachment points. There's some tanks that sit up against that bulkhead. I don't really know what they do, but there's at least two that we have to go ahead and put together. And then I need to come in and scratch off some of that wiring detail that they have molded into the plastic so I can eventually come back and add my own. So we have a little bit of work to do for sure. Now, I did mention that we're going to be using some instrument panel decals, and we have them right here in the kit. But like I said, these only handle just the basic gauges. They don't actually add anything in that little kick out that I did in the very front of the instrument panel or on the side consoles. There's a couple of gauges there as well. And there is what looks to be some form of a fuse panel or switch panel on the lower right-hand side, and a couple of switches here and there on some scratch built details. So I'm going to go ahead and have to source out some decals. And I'm thinking of going through my spares box, and I've got a couple of instrument panels I never used from other model kits, so I should be able to cut out certain dials and just use those here. So let's go ahead and jump into our very first time lapse. We're going to go ahead and finish up the instrument panel, get those decals attached, work on a couple of cockpit details. I need to string in some wires behind the seat, and then we're going to go ahead and turn our attention over, and I think we'll build the engine. Just do a real basic assembly, guys. So let's go ahead and get this thing going and see what we can do. And after a little bit of work here, our instrument panel is looking pretty sharp. I like how all the decals have kind of settled into the recesses. I did add in a couple of extra decals here and there along the left side console and the right side of the console, right along the wall. And then one little box that I scratch built, I threw some switches on that. But now we're going to go ahead and move over to the engine area. The back side of the engine firewall, there's not a lot of details. There are these, what I'm assuming are some form of air filters that we just glue into the side here, but that's about it. I was going through my stash box and I was looking at my references and trying to figure out how we could kind of spice this area up. And I think I've come up with a plan. Now, during my search here in my spares box, I found the back of an engine, and it actually is for a Focke-Wulf FW190. I don't know if that's the crankcase or if it's something along those lines. Whatever it is, it actually looks very similar to the back of the engine we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. And yeah, I know it's a different engine and it's not exactly 100% correct, but I'm okay with that because my plan is to use multiple sizes of solder wire to go ahead and string up cables and some hoses and make it look really busy. And more than likely this will be obscured, but it will add some form of substance to the inside of that engine firewall detail. So let's go ahead and jump into our time lapse, guys. It's going to be a big one. We're going to go ahead and use a bunch of different lengths and diameters of solder, and we're going to go ahead and create as busy of a look as we possibly can. That also means assembling some of the parts and pieces, get everything attached, and let's just hope it looks cool. So on with the build, guys. Let's do some detailing and some scratch building. All right, everybody, we are back. And after quite a bit of work here, I think this looks pretty cool. Now, what I did is I just poked some holes in the back of the firewall and I strung a bunch of different diameters of solder all the way from the front to the back, looped them around, poked them into different areas. From the outside looking in, you can tell a lot more detail, a lot more action. Now, is it 100% accurate? No, it's not, but that's okay. I wasn't going for that. I just wanted to go ahead and give a bit of an artistic feel. It would be next to impossible to get this thing looking 100% accurate. There's so many wires and pipes and cabling in there on the real thing, but at least ways this gives me a very nice look and I appreciate it a lot. Now, if we go ahead and put on the lower part of this wing, we can kind of get an idea of how it all goes together. And as you can tell, well, there's a little bit of a difference between the kit parts here in the wheel wells and what we added in our scratch building frenzy. So we're going to have to go ahead and figure out how to best match these up and to kind of tie them together. There are some wires and whatnot that we could run from the wheel wells up into that center section, but I don't really know how that's going to work out quite yet. It's going to be for a future expansion. But right now, I think we are good for today. We've got that bulkhead all nicely squared away. We've got our wires and all that. We do have to come in and paint it though. Probably going to go ahead and hit it with an interior green color and just call it a day. But yeah, so far I am really digging how this is looking. This is such a fun kit, guys, for sure. And I think with the addition of just a little extra parts here and there, it really kind of brings it to life and adds a lot more character to the build. So I like it. Now, to accomplish this look, I went ahead and I used different size diameters of solder. In this case, we have like 4 different sizes that we would be able to mix and match. We've got this size, which is pretty big. I have no idea what the size is because it's just scraps. I have this right here, which is 0.35. I think that is a nice size for kind of middle of the road. We have our very small 0.3 that we can use here, and that we use that for a lot of things, to be honest. And then we have this, which is actually 0.63. And that was able to give us our larger pipes and different wires and whatnot for that internal area there by the engine. So yeah. So far, so good, guys. I am having a blast with this build. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite builds I've done so far on the Ben Builds with Joe series that we do. Such a neat looking aircraft. I put a lot of work there into that front engine section and the cockpit. I also went ahead and added in the exhaust ports. You can see on the right and left side. I drilled out those openings to give it a little extra depth, a little extra character. Well, that looks good. The cockpit is more or less ready to be sealed up. I have to go ahead and paint that internal area that I just built today. And then I have to come back in and add in the tail wheel. After that all goes together, we have our engine that we can go ahead and mount, and then our cowling to go on top of that. And I'm kind of toying with the idea of maybe adding some wires to the front of this engine to get it looking a little bit more action-packed. I don't know if that's really necessary because the cowling might be so tight you don't really see inside very much. But if so, I do have some 0.3 solder which I could use on that, and that might work perfectly. But if I don't, no big deal really, because that giant prop will probably obscure most of the detail, and that cowling is pretty tight around the engine, so it may not be worth it, to be honest. But we're going to go ahead and call it quits for today, guys. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. So far, so good. We do have a couple of extra little things to do here, like, for example, paint that area and also include that rear tail wheel. But yeah, we are looking beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us here on Ben Builds with Joe, episode number 3. Make sure to head over to Joe's channel, check out his build. His Bearcat's looking awesome. Give him a thumbs up, drop a comment if you want to, subscribe if you haven't already. Great guy, awesome builder. We'll see you back here on episode number 4. And until then, you guys know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. And we'll see you back here on Ben Builds with Joe and our F8F-1 Bearcat. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.